Washington Democratic Congressman Adam Smith joins me now. He's the ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. So, Congressman Smith, always great to see you. Thanks for joining us. First of all, let's get your reaction to Hamas's partial acceptance, but its acceptance to two very big pillars of the Trump peace plan. Your reaction?
It's a positive step without question, but we have been here before. Over the course of the almost 2 years now of this conflict, there have been a lot of negotiations, a lot of offers on the table. So we've got a long way to go to make sure that both sides, both Hamas and the Israeli government, ultimately agree. I mean, they've agreed in principle, but as your report mentioned, Israel's still bombing, so the war clearly hasn't ended. And there is the distinct risk at this point that one side or the other will say, well, that's not what we agreed to, or the other side isn't following, they're violating the agreement. So we got a long way to go before we get to peace here, but it is a positive step. Let's just hope that it continues and it actually gets to an actual end to the war.
Congressman, in the last 3 minutes, President Trump on his social media platform has said Israel must immediately stop bombing, which Margaret Brennan, my colleague, mentioned was going on based on our reporting from producers in the region. That already suggests you're onto something, that there might be tension right now as we're discussing this between the White House and the Israeli government.
Well, I'm glad that President Trump is making those forceful statements. And look, I've been a supporter of Israel throughout this conflict. I understand what happened on October 7th. I understand the threats that Israel faces from Hezbollah, from Hamas, from Iran, from the Houthis, and what they have to do to defend themselves against this. But it's been several weeks now since there's been anything that could really be achieved militarily in Gaza. So I've called for an end to the war by Israel and choosing a different path to replace Hamas. I think it is time to ramp up the pressure on Israel if they don't follow what President Trump has laid out.
To the shutdown, Congressman Smith, is it only going to be external events, something bad happening or a collection of bad things happening that are going to change what Kaylin Huey Burns accurately described a moment ago as dug-in partisan strife?
Well, I reject the partisan strife comment. I mean, that trivializes it. What's happening here is really important. President Trump and the Republican Party, ever since they got into office in January, has ruled in the most partisan, dictatorial way that I've ever witnessed. They have completely ignored Democrats, jammed through their agenda, certainly never seeking Democratic votes, but even the president's gone beyond that. He has voided spending agreements, which he continues to do. Things that were in law, passed by Congress, signed into law, that the president just decided to unilaterally void. He's fired hundreds of thousands of people, frozen hundreds of $billions in programs. He just did it again a couple days ago, stopping funding of transportation projects in the Northeast that had been approved, and freezing billions of dollars in energy projects that, in many cases, were well on their way to completion. He has ruled and said, Democrats don't matter, we're not talking to you. And now, as we try to negotiate how to continue that budget, the Trump budget that we feel is having such a devastating impact, Mike Johnson said, we don't care what you have to say. We're not interested in talking to you. This is what you have to vote for. And it's like, well, if you want to rule that way, okay, fine, if you can get away with it. But when it comes time to actually ask for a Democrat's vote, why would we vote for that? Why would we vote for the budget that President Trump put in place? Healthcare is a huge part of it. Certainly, if this goes forward, as has been well documented, millions of people are going to lose their healthcare insurance. We want to stop that. But that is one piece of the larger puzzle. The Republicans have chosen to rule as if they are in an autocratic situation where Democrats don't matter. And now they're saying, but you have to vote for this because we need your votes at this point. We're not going to vote for a budget that we think is having such a negative impact on the country.
So what's the X factor, Congressman Smith, that changes the dynamic you just described on their side and your side? Because to your point, I'll accept all the things you've outlined in your terms, but the administration, as you know, likes the things you've decried, and they're intending in this shutdown to do more of them. So what's the X factor that changes the calculus?
Well, the X factor is the Republicans wake up and realize that if you need Democratic votes, you have to negotiate. I mean, it's been just astonishing to listen to Mike Johnson say, I'm not going to negotiate. In fact, I heard him say on an interview I was doing earlier today that, well, we don't have anything to negotiate with. The Democrats sent us something that we don't like. Well, that's the nature of negotiations, Mike. All right, you didn't like it, send us something back. Instead of sending something back, he said, no, we're not negotiating. They have to accept what we offered, period, full stop. So they're going to have to change that. And you're seeing the pressure, as you reported. The country wants those health care things extended. They don't want millions of people to lose their health insurance. What has to change is the Republicans have to at least say, we're willing to negotiate. They step across that line, then we can start talking. But that's what has to happen first.
Congressman Smith, you've been good enough to stay with us into the next segment. I'm very happy to hear that. Welcome back to Takeout. I'm grateful to welcome back Washington Democratic Congressman and Ranking Member of the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith. Congressman, you heard me go into break about this latest kinetic military action in international waters, some 2,500 nautical miles from the United States off the coast of Venezuela. The administration has notified Congress that it's part of an armed conflict. Evaluate that based on legality and whether or not this is a wise allocation currently of U.S. military assets.
I don't believe it is. The president has launched us into another endless war. I mean, literally, he sort of said that. We're fighting all drug traffickers, apparently. So we'll get to the legality in a minute, but from a policy perspective, this is a conflict that has not even been remotely defined. Who exactly are we fighting, and what is the end state that we're looking for? This will presumably go on forever, and it is a major use of resources, and also it ramps up the conflict. We're starting a war, certainly with a number of different drug cartels, but potentially with Venezuela as well, if you listen to President Trump's rhetoric. So it's very problematic in terms of the level of the conflict. But second of all, the law in terms of armed conflict is you have the right to self-defense if you are facing an armed attack. Drugs are absolutely a scourge upon our nation. I happen to think that we should pay a lot more attention to the demand side of that scourge, discouraging people from demanding the drugs. But certainly you have to interdict what is coming in as well. But the law of armed conflict doesn't say that you can use lethal force from the military because someone is selling drugs in your country. This is a massive expansion of what the U.S. military is allowed to do. And also, they're not providing us with much in the way of information. They say who they hit, but we don't know if that's true. And we don't know exactly what their long-term plan is. So I don't think it's legal, and I don't think it's the right policy.
Is this a war powers resolution debate to come?
Yeah, but it's interesting because the war powers resolution, again, contemplates some sort of threat to the U.S. or some sort of approval from Congress. Yeah, it should be part of the war powers resolution. The law on that is you have to notify Congress, and then you've got 60 days to either get congressional approval or cease hostilities. As far as I know, we have not yet received that war powers resolution notification from the administration. They've been very opaque about this.
Congressman Adam Smith, I appreciate your time. Thanks so very much.
Thanks, Major. I appreciate the chance.